we're going to give out our report cards. And I'm going to let you guys give me some feedback. I'm going to give you guys what I think about it. Quarterback is an A-. Nico Iamaleava would have been an A+ after the first quarter. But those misses in the first quarter were too hard to overcome. Again, he was 17 of 23 for 209 yards and a career high 4 touchdowns on the game. But he also was 2 of 6 to start the game. That does mean he finished 5 of 7, but going 2 of 6 to start the game is why the quarterback gets an A-. And also, by the way, when we do report cards, we do it by the entire position unit. So we have to factor in how Navy Schuler and Gaston Moore played coming in the fourth quarter in reserve for Nico Iamaleava. Navy Schuler was 1 of 3 for 10 yards. Gaston Moore was 0 for 2. So that brings it to an A-. Still great passing by Nico Iamaleava, but the team as a whole, again, wasn't perfect. That's what we have to say. So quarterback does get an A-. Now, going to running backs, they get an A. Now, there were no 100-yard rushers. Dylan Sampson did have another touchdown run, but he only finished with 11 carries for 77 yards. However, the running backs get an A because they were so effective no matter what. Because Dylan Sampson had 11 carries for 77 yards and a touchdown. Peyton Lewis had 7 carries for 46 yards and 2 touchdowns. And then Cam Selden got in and had 9 carries for 44 yards and a touchdown. So those three together had 27 carries for 167 yards and 4 touchdowns. That is a really, really, really good day. That's over 6 yards a carry for the running backs. Oh, and Khalifa Keith had 4 carries for 39 yards. So actually, they had 31 carries for 205 yards on the day. Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry, 31 carries for 205 yards. 31 carries for 205 yards. Running backs were an A. On top of that, Dylan Sampson was huge in the passing game. He had 2 catches for 25 yards. So he actually did cross the 100-yard mark from scrimmage in this game. So yes, running backs get an A. Wide receivers get a B+. Brew McCoy had the 2 touchdowns. Squirrel White had the touchdown. Nobody had over 50 yards receiving, though, and you didn't feel like most people got separation. Dante Thornton had 2 catches for 24 yards. Squirrel White, 2 for 15. Mike Matthews had a 25-yard grab. Almost had a touchdown catch. Braylon Staley got in with a 10-yard grab. Chaz Nimrod had a target but didn't make a catch. Nobody was standout spectacular among the wide receivers. They get a B+ because they didn't do anything wrong, but I can't go A when no one stand out spectacular. So that's my only knock. Tight ends, they get an A-. Now, pass pro is why they get an A-. They were part of the pass pro issues in the first half. However, the tight ends, at the same time, we have to say, Miles Kitselman had 2 catches for 34 yards. Holden Stace had 2 catches for 30 yards. And Ethan Davis had 2 catches for 19 yards and a touchdown. They were targeted 6 times, and they had 6 catches as a unit for 83 yards and a touchdown. Tight ends absolutely get an A for how they play. Offensive line, B-. Interior blocking, Cooper Mays, Javonte Spraggins did what they needed to do. It was great. But pass blocking, the tackles, they got better as the game went on. But once again, Nico Iamaleava was sacked 3 times. It was very, very poor pass blocking. Because of that, I have to give this unit just a B. Can't give them an A. There were too many issues. Now, defensive line, A. They had 15 tackles for a loss because of the push. They only allowed 2.1 yards a carry as UTEP had just 81 yards on the ground. They got pressure all in the middle. They had, as a team, 4 sacks. James Pierce Jr., being the star of the defensive line, was doing what the defensive line does after struggling last week. You got to give them credit for that. Huge credit to the defensive line. Now, linebackers, B. They stopped the run well, but Jeremiah Thielander was again out of position a few times, so we have to knock them for that. Arian Carter did have 3 solo tackles, 4 total, and we do need to send a shout out to Jalen Smith, who got in and had 5 total tackles, 3 solo, and 1.5 tackles for a loss. Caleb Perry also had 1.5 tackles for a loss. So those linebackers did make big plays. Caleb Perry had 4 total tackles, 1 solo, but at the end of the day, you just can't look past the struggles and the issues that Jeremiah Thielander was dealing with. So because of that, linebackers have to get a B. I mean, I can't give anybody a C in this game, but if somebody was going to, because there was just no way to show a C in this game because of how dominant Tennessee was, it just didn't show much. But if somebody was going to get a C, let's just be honest, it was going to be linebackers, and you could possibly make that case. And finally, passing secondary, I give the secondary an A. They did allow UTEP to complete 21 of 36 passes, but it was for 149 yards, and it was only 4 yards a carry. And one of them was a trick play that was a 27-yard pass from Trey Goodman. So, I mean, we can sit there all day and talk about how when you take that out, the secondary was mostly fine. The quarterbacks, they were very efficient at converting meaningless passes. Okay, J.P. Pickles was 10 of 15, but for only 72 yards. And Skylar Locklear was 10 of 19, but for only 50 yards. And then when you add in the fact that there were 2 interceptions between John Slaughter and Jamal McCoy, and the fact that Ricky gets in the third, forced to fumble, I'm giving an A to the secondary. Now, special teams. And here's where the fun goes. All right, on special teams, Jackson Ross gets an A for punting. Now, you may ask, why doesn't he get an A+? And I will tell you why. He had 1 punt go for a touchback. That was the one negative. But he did have 3 punts in the 20, had a long of 52, 6 punts for 281 yards, averaging 46.8 yards per a punt. So punting does get an A. Would have been an A+ without that one that I'm talking about. Okay, next, kicking. Incomplete, but an A. All kickoffs went for touchbacks, and Max Gilbert hit all 8 extra points. Can't really say anything negative about that. So kicking is an A. There was the return game, which also includes the field goal block game. Now, they didn't block any field goals, but there were 2 missed field goals by UTEP. So give Tennessee credit for the pressure on that. And then there was a 26-yard kick return by Peyton Lewis, but we've talked about it. Boo Carter had 3 punt returns for 61 yards, a 38-yard return, and an 18-yard return that set up 2 separate touchdowns. And because of that, Tennessee's return game gets an A+. The strongest of the game. They gave them the short field. It was an incredible performance by the Tennessee football return game. So with that in mind, that is your report card. You got your torchbearers. We got plenty of more coming out. Tennessee is, again, they complete their second undefeated season at home in 3 years, beating the UTEP Miners 56-0. At the same time, the Indiana Hoosiers lost to the Ohio State Buckeyes in a blowout, and the Florida Gators lost to the Ole Miss Rebels, the Florida Gators beat the Ole Miss Rebels, which has effectively put Tennessee back into the college football playoff. They have 1 regular season game left as they move to 9-2, and the message is simple. Beat Vanderbilt on the road next week, and they are going to be in the college football playoff the first year of the expanded playoff. Tennessee wins